Good morning everyone. I'm happy to welcome you to the Eilat Eilot Energy Storage Forum. As you know, we are now doing every second year, we are doing our big Eilat Eilot conference in Eilat, and this year we're doing a more focused and professional forum on an issue which we see as the most we at Eilat Eilot always like to look forward to the future, and we believe that we are now in the middle of a process of high penetration of renewable energy all over the world, hopefully also in Israel soon. And in order to enable that, the needed solution is storage, cheap storage for renewable energy, in order to make renewable energy a viable technology that is really replacing fossil fuels and not only an addition. This is a necessity, and we're going to discuss the two major issues. One issue is technology, and the other issue is regulation, because without technology, energy storage will not become cheaper, and without regulation and government support, we will not be able to implement it. In a way, it's similar to PV 10 years ago. It needed the technology, needed the government support. We got the technology, we got the government support, and now PV is already being implemented, and we believe that the next phase is energy storage. Again, organizing this event is the Eilat Eilot Renewable Energy Initiative, headed by Dorit Bannett, that is going to speak later. And I welcome you again, and I invite Udi Gat, the mayor of the Eilot region, to congratulate everyone.
Boker Tov, good morning everybody. I'll do my regards this morning in Hebrew. So if somebody needs his ears, so. ברכות לכל מי שקשור, עשה, דחף ודאג שיום זה יצא לפועל. תודה כמובן לעודד אגמון מרשות החשמל, למיכה בן דוד מחברת חשמל, לעופר שהוא יושב ראש, ולדורית שהיא מנהלת, ולנועם אילן ממנהלת האנרגיה המתחדשת, אילת אילות, אני מדבר עליה בהמשך. תודה כמובן לתושבי נאות סמדר שמאחרים אותנו היום בביתם, ואני מקווה שלכל אחד ממי שנוכח פה היום ולא היה פה קודם, יספיק קצת ללמוד, להכיר, להציץ במקום המיוחד הזה שאנחנו כאן בחבל אילות מאוד מאוד גאים בו. תודה כמובן ליזמים ולמתעניינים ולרגולטורים ולאורחים שנמצאים פה היום. תודה לכולם. קודם וראשית כמה מילים דווקא על החיבור של היום בהקשר של חנוכת השדה הסולרי שאנחנו עושים פה היום. בראיית המקרו-אזורית, זהו אחד מ6 שדות העומדים וקיימים בחבל אילות. בקטורה וכאן, ביוטבתה וגרופית, באליפז ובמכרות תמנה, נוסיף להם את השדה בעברונה שכבר עומד, וזה המוקם בסמר ביחד עם גגות על רפתות ובתים, ונוכל להגיד שמה שהצהרנו לפני מספר שנים ספורות בלבד, לספק באופן עצמאי מהאזור הזה, אנחנו מספקים בעזרת השדות האלה כ-50% מהחשמל של אילת ואילות. עם סיום שני הפרויקטים הגדולים של השדה הגדול בקטורה של 40 מגה, ושל השדה היוצא למכרז בקרוב בתמנה של 60 מגה, נספק 100% ואפילו יותר מצריכת החשמל באזור קיצון זה ביום. כשהקמנו את מנהלת האנרגיה המתחדשת אילת אילות, רצינו שזה מה שיקרה. שהמנהלה ואנשיה יוכלו לתמוך, לעזור, לנווט, לדרבן יזמים פרטיים וקיבוצים, להתקדם מהר יותר מאחרים וליצור ודאות אנרגטית אחרת. פה בחבל, כך קרה. בעזרת זה להביא אנשים ומשפחות ועבודה וליישב חבל ארץ שהינו 13% משטח מדינת ישראל וחיים בו רק 4,000 תושבים. כשלא הפסקנו להילחם על זכות העולם לחיות חיים בסביבת אנרגיה נקייה יותר, ונמשיך להוביל מאבק לאומי לשחרור מכסות תוך כדי התאמת מחירים למצב של ביטחון כלכלי, גם ללא סובסידיות. בכנס שמתנהל היום כאן בנאות צמדה, אנחנו מוכיחים שאיננו מפחדים מנושאים שעדיין לא פתורים לגמרי. כאזור שתמיד מוביל ורץ לפני המחנה, נוביל גם את נושא ההגירה. נדרבן גופים, מוסדות ומכוני מחקר ליזום ולקדם תחום זה, כמו גם תחום ענק וגדול נוסף, שמן הראוי שנוביל כאן באזור מרוחק ומדברי זה, והוא תחום האוף גריד. אנו נהיה בחבל אילות שדה הניסוי, ההדגמה, ההובלה של האוף גריד, כי במידה גדולה העולם השלישי מחפש תשובות. איך לקלוט את השמש והרוח, לנצלה למטרות מקומיות ועצמאיות ללא חיבור לרשת. לשאוב מים מהבאר, להעיר תאורה מקומית בלילה, לטחון קמח וכו'. לכאן יבואו מכל העולם לראות וללמוד, בדיוק כפי שקרה לנו כמובילי התחום הסולרי, כך מפתחים אזור, כך מביאים מתיישבים חדשים. אנחנו מזמינים כל יזם, חברה, בעל רעיון או פטנט, להשתמש בשדה הניסויים שלנו לממש את חלומותיו. אנחנו מבקשים מחברת חשמל להצטרף למהלך ולהקים פיילוטים של הגירה על הרשת ההולכה חלוקה באזור אילת אילות, ובכך להיות שדה ניסויים ייחודי ובינלאומי להחדרת חוכמה של אנרגיות מתחדשות לרשת במקורות מבוזרים. יחד עם המנהלה לתחליפי דלקים שבמשרד ראש הממשלה, אנו מקימים כאן בערבה את המעבדה הלאומית לתחליפי דלקים, ויחד עם גידולים, חקלאים, סמו-חקלאים, הפקה וייצור ביודיזל, נוכל לבסס את העיסוק בהרחבת מנדט האנרגיות החליפיות שבחבל. המרכז המדעי, מבנה המעבדות, הגדול ביותר מדרום לשדה בוקר, קו נטוי באר שבע, קרי, הגדול ביותר בחצי הדרומי של מדינת ישראל, כי באר שבע היא אמצע המדינה, נבנה בימים אלו על ידי המועצה בהשקעה של כ4 מיליון דולר בסמוך למבנה המועצה האזורית חבל אילות. זהו מרכז שייתן תשובה מדעית לכל תחומי המדע, אבל במיוחד ודגש לנושא האנרגיה מתחדשת. תודה למשרד לשיתוף פעולה אזורי, לקרן הקיימת, ל-JNF ארצות הברית וקהילת טורונטו ומגבית קנדה ששותפים איתנו בחזון זה ובבניית המקום. אנו מאמינים בכל ליבנו שבמקביל לגילוי הגז, לא במקומו ובטח לא בגללו, יש להרחיב את מרחב ויכולת הפיתוח של אנרגיות מתחדשות ונקיות לטובת עתידה של מדינת ישראל, ביטחונה, פיתוח הפריפריות שלה, שמירת האוויר ומחויבותיה הבינלאומיות. במאמר מוסגר וקצר נזכיר מה שהתפרסם רק תמול שלשום, שבהולנד, שבה נמצא גז בשנות ה-50-60, ושסיפק ופיתח את המדינה ותעשייתה שנים רבות, נגמר הגז. ושהמדינה בימים אלה עסוקה בשינוי הכיוון שאנו כבר עושים בימים אלה פה בחבל אילות. שיהיה בהצלחה לכולם.
I hope you all noticed the beautiful venue, this amazing place and this amazing kibbutz, and I would like to invite Alon Shemi from Kibbutz Nord Smadar to say a few words. They are hosting this event.
ברוכים הבאים לכל משתתפי הפורום ואורחיו. אני עומד כאן, למען האמת נרגש כדי לברך אתכם בשם המקום הזה, נאות סמדר, שנבחר השנה לארח את הכנס. לכבוד הוא לנו להיות אכסניה לכנס כזה. ולמרות שהנושא שלו הוא כל כך מקצועי, הייתי אומר כמעט אזוטרי, אנו חשים שזה מקומו הטבעי. מקומו הטבעי כנושאים של אנרגיה מתחדשת ואיתם נושאים של קיימות, קרובים לליבנו ונוגעים בליבת העשייה שלנו, שהיא חינוכית בעיקרה, והיא מציבה שאלות על יחסי האדם עם הסביבה, האדם עם זולתו והאדם עם עצמו. טבעי גם כי הבית הזה בו אנו ישובים, הקרוי בפינו בית האומנויות, תוכנן ונבנה על ידי קהילת נאות סמדר במשך 15 שנה כפרויקט חלוצי בתחום של בנייה מדברית וחיסכון באנרגיה. וזו לנו הפעם הראשונה לארח בו כנס מסוג זה. וטבעי גם במיוחד כי בימים אלו ממש מתחבר לרשת החשמל השדה הסולרי בגודל 8 מגוואט שנבנה כאן, פרי יוזמה משותפת שלנו ושל חברת טנא כחלק מהחזון הכולל של חבל אילות, והוא יחנך במהלך כנס זה. אנחנו מזמינים אתכם תוך כדי הכנס גם להציץ אל מעבר לקירותיו העבים של המבנה ולפגוש את המקום ואנשיו. לצורך זה יתקיימו בצהריים סיורים בהדרכתנו. באולם הקרוב מוקרנים סרטונים על המקום, ואתם גם מוזמנים לפגוש אותנו בדוכן שלנו בחצר ובחנות. בשם חברי נאות סמדר אני מאחל לכם פורום פורה, בתקווה שייצר ניצוצות ושיביא תובנות חדשות ושתנעם לכם שהותכם במקום. תודה.
Last short greeting by a long-time friend of Eilat Eilot Renewable Energy Project, Mr. Eitan Parnas, the CEO of the Israeli Renewable Energy Association. Please, Eitan.
בוקר טוב לכולם, שמח לראות אתכם, פרצופים מוכרים, חלקכם לא מוכרים. באמת צריך קודם כל לפרגן לאנשי אילת אילות, לדורית, לנועם, לאודי גת, למקום הזה, לאנשים האלה, לחזון, אנשים שיושבים כאן כמו ג'ון כהן, אנשים שאני מכיר אותם שנים, שבונים ועושים, ואנשים רבים אחרים שנמצאים כאן. אני רוצה להגיד לכם ולהביא לכם את הבשורה שהיא לא כל כך טובה, מהחזית הקדמית של הקידום של אנרגיות מתחדשות בישראל. ובכלל אני מניח שהנושא הוא נושא בינלאומי, ובכל מקום בעולם שמקדמים אנרגיה מתחדשת, בסופו של יום יגיע היום ומגיע הרגע שהרגולטור אומר לתעשייה, עצור. הוא אומר עצור, כי המגבלות הקיימות של רשתות החשמל לא מאפשרות שילוב אנרגיות מתחדשות בהיקפים משמעותיים. ישראל רחוקה מהמקום הזה, אבל את היעדים של אירופה אנחנו שומעים עד לכאן. ושוועדת יוגב יושבת בימים האלה, הוועדה לשינוי מבני במשק החשמל, הרפורמה במשק החשמל, שינוי משק החשמל. הוועדה הזו למעשה דנה היום, ועדה ממשלתית, מי שלא מכיר, מעצבת היום את משק החשמל העתידי של ישראל. אז אני יכול לספר לכם שאני הופעתי בפני הוועדה הזאת רק שלשום, וכבר העדים של עצירת האנרגיות המתחדשות נשמעים שם, כאשר אומרים לנו אי אפשר להכניס יותר חשמל לרשת, ואתם צריכים לבנות פתרונות טכנולוגיים של רשת חכמה, של ניהול חכם ושל אגירה. אגירה תהיה הפתרון החשוב ביותר שישנה את עולם החשמל ויחזיר אותו, את הקוץ' שיוצר בגז, יחזיר אותו רחוק להיסטוריה של האנושות. אנחנו מחכים ליום הזה שבהם אנרגיות ירוקות, נקיות לחלוטין, שיוצרו כאן ובכל מקום אחר על גגות ועל קרקעות וביישובים וחשמל קהילתי והרבה מאוד דברים טובים יקרו. אליכם אני פונה, אל הפרצופים שאני לא מכיר עדיין בחדר הזה, וחלק מהם אני מכיר, אל הסטארט-אפיסטים, אל היוזמות. תמשיכו הלאה, תצעדו קדימה, הכסף, ההשקעות נמצאות, גם נמצאים כאן משקיעים, אני רואה כאן אנשים שבאו, שאני מכיר אותם מעולם קרנות ההון סיכון, ויש את הקרן של המנהלת, למעשה את קפיטל נייצ'ר שנמצאים כאן. הכסף לא יעצור אתכם. תבואו עם רעיונות טובים, ואני מבטיח לכם שכל מי שבתעשייה הזו, בממשלה, ונמצאים כאן פקידים של משרד הכלכלה, כולם יעזרו לזה לקרות. הכוחות הם עצומים, אנחנו צריכים לנצח. אני מברך אתכם, שיהיה לכם באמת כנס מענה, ושנצליח למצוא הרבה מאוד אינוביישן כאן בקצה הזה של המדבר, וכמו שהמדבר צריך מים, עולם החשמל צריך את האגירה. תודה רבה.
Thank you, Eitan. Okay, so now we're going to start with our first keynote speaker. Germany, as you all know, is the world pioneer in renewable energy. It was the first to implement PV, and Israel and I think the rest of the world is trying to learn the German system, but the Germans are also not only pioneers, but the most successful. And since Germany has a very high percentage of renewable energy penetration, the next stage for Germany will probably be storage. So I'm glad to invite Dr. Werner Schnapphof, the former environmental minister of Bavaria and a renowned expert on renewable energy, to give us an overview of what's the current situation in the German renewable energy market and how he sees the future of that. Please, Dr. Werner.
Thank you very much, Noam. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all to have the chance to be here. As we started around about 1 year ago, GIREC, that is German Israeli Renewable Energies Committee, established by the German-Israeli Chamber of Commerce in Tel Aviv. Eitan, where is Eitan now? Eitan and me, we have the honor to be vice chairs of that. Ophir Paspines is the chairman of that committee. And we had a common kickoff meeting in Tel Aviv and a common conference in Munich at Intersolar. We met in Munich as well, and I'm very happy to meet also the representative of the Free State of Bavaria, Gudel Rosenberg, who will give you a speech this afternoon. So Noam asked me to say some sentences what I'm doing at the moment. You mentioned already that I served as an environmental minister in Bavaria for around about 10 years. And after that, I had the honor to represent German industry, the biggest federation of industry we have, BDI. And nowadays, I work in a law firm called Graf von Westphalen, which does a lot of inbound and outbound business with Israel. And besides that, I work as a senior advisor to Bank of America Merrill Lynch in that field of energy and sustainability for Europe, North Africa, Middle East. And so I'm very glad to have the chance to be here. As a minister, I visited a lot of different places around the world, but never I had the chance to be on such a unique place than today. Therefore, I think it's a good place for that forum to discuss about new developments. I would like to give you an overview about 3 parts of my presentation. First part is facts and figures about the situation in Germany, and the second is the Energiewende, and concluding with some aspects from the European Union. First, some facts and figures. I know that that presentation is not so clear to can read what is written down on that chart. Therefore, I would like to explain the most important figures. These are the decisions made by government and parliament in Germany. This is about the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, especially CO2 emissions. The first column is up to 2020. The second one up to 2030, 2040, 2050. You see CO2 reduction 40% within the next 6 years. So the second column is the share of renewables in gross energy consumption. You see, these are reduction targets, and these are the targets to increase the share of renewables within these next decades in Germany. And the third column is the share of renewables in gross electricity consumption. You see, at first column, it's 35% up to 2020. And at the moment, to give you an updated information, I guess everybody knows that we have elections in Germany. And at the moment, the Christian Democrats, the Christian Social Union on the one hand side, and the Social Democrats, the SPD, are negotiating about building a grand coalition. And just yesterday, they discussed about
that target, how to increase the share of renewables in gross electricity consumption up to 2030. Perhaps you can read this figure, it's 50%. That's a decision made the last government. And yesterday they discussed to increase that share up to 2030. The Conservative Party says 55%, and the Social Democrats demand 75%. You see how ambitious Germany is to go this way, the way of
the Energiewende. Besides that, the word Energiewende in the meantime is an international, very well-known word. And I often speak abroad. Last time when I had the chance in September to speak in Finland, they asked me, and have a look at this next chart, do you really want to phase out nuclear power in Germany? And what you see on this chart is the way which is decided up to 2022. Not any nuclear power plant in Germany will run, or will run no more. Each and every party, conservatives, socialists, Green Party, liberals, all parties in Germany agree to phase out nuclear power. There's no doubt, not any doubt, even in Bavaria, Godel, where we have a lot of nuclear power at the moment, even they are decided to phase it out. Next chart will show you how big the challenge is Germany has, because this chart shows you the nowadays situation about electricity generation in Germany, which is highly dependent on nuclear and fossil fuels. Even if you can't read all the figures because it's too far or not focused enough, you see lignite more than 20%, nuclear more than 20%, coal around about 20%, natural gas 30%. Germany at the moment is highly dependent on nuclear and fossil, and also the next chart shows that altogether the fossil fuels 57%, the nuclear part 17%, and you may imagine which ambitious challenge it is to decrease these enormous amounts of energy generation from fossil and nuclear to renewables within such a short time, with such a high impact of German industry. When I worked for the German Industry Federation, BDI, we were very proud that Germany nowadays has round about 23, 25% of our GDP is responsible for that, the industry. And that is one factor which stabilizes our wealth and which stabilized Germany at all in the financial crisis. When you see to other countries, for instance, Spain or Italy or Greece and so on, or also France and UK, the part of industry of GDP is only 10, 11, 12, 13%. We have round about 1/4 of our GDP caught by industry. And what is very, very important is to secure the whole chain. That means that in Germany it is very important to produce chemicals, to produce steel, and so on, is the basis for industry and the cost competitiveness of industry in Germany. And therefore it is a highly complicated way we want to go to realize the Energiewende. Next chart. Because on this chart you see what will happen. Nowadays we have a fully centralized electric system in Germany with big plants. Nuclear power plant has more than 1,000 megawatt, normally 1,250 megawatt.
fully centralized. And this picture shows you the future, a completely decentralized system in Germany. You needn't to recognize all the different things. This is onshore wind, offshore wind, onshore wind, water power. Even the private household, they have hundreds of thousands PV panels on the rooftops. Gordon Rosenberg and me, we came from Bavaria. Nearly each and every farmer in Bavaria has PV panels on his rooftop. And although big companies like BMW, I guess everybody knows that famous car producer, BMW decided to produce the power by its own. The new factory in Leipzig, for instance, they built there huge windmills to produce the power for the BMW factory in Leipzig. And the quite new development is in Munich, they have geothermal energy, and BMW bought all the rights to produce geothermal energy for the Munich plant. That's quite a new development that huge companies started to produce own power. Not the well-known utilities. I guess everybody knows E.ON in Germany, or RWE. We say the big four, Vattenfall and ENBW. These big four, they are part of the centralized system. And now hundreds of thousands of private households, of industrialized companies, they started to produce power by its own in a totally decentralized system with new developments, with e-mobility. That is the long-run important possibility to store the highly volatile power of wind and solar. And therefore, you may imagine which is the challenge to produce power by renewables, highly volatile, with not enough possibilities to store. Therefore, the next performance will be a very, very important one for the success of that decentralized system in future. So next chart will show us a short overview how expensive that will be. Look at this here. We expect until 2030 at least more than 370 billion of euros investment only in Germany, and until 2050 around about 700 billion euros investment only in Germany. And perhaps you had the chance, like me, to read the internet of today, the latest news from yesterday in Warsaw, the World Climate Conference. They said, in the meantime, 56 countries worldwide decided to follow that German example of Energiewende. 56. I was astonished about that figure, but it's written down in the latest news from the Climate Conference. So, what does it mean? Next. What does it mean for the competition? It is an enormous chance for German enterprises. Thank you. You see the different branches: electricity generation, storage, grids, smart metering, and so on, insulation. Enormous investment, and many of the German companies have the first mover advantage, but also the challenge to be one of the first. We discussed when we came here, Noam, the situation of Siemens and Soleil. We discussed shortly about Better Place and also other big names of companies, for instance Bosch. Bosch bought a big company, Ersol, in Erfurt. They have to close it now. Therefore, it's a highly complicated way. It's not without risk. But what I want to bring over is that Germany is decided, strongly committed to that. We will do that. We will go this way. We will not invest in fracking. We will not invest like the US does it in shale gas. We will realize, and especially wind onshore and wind offshore, and PV, solar. Besides that, waste and biomass, but wind and solar, these are the main renewables Germany will use. So let me conclude this part with a short look at rising costs. One of the biggest challenges are the rising costs in Germany, because as I heard from Noam when we visited one of the PV plants, which starts today, you have also a feed-in tariff, and Germany guarantees it for 20 years, and therefore we have in the meantime more than 20 billion euros per year to pay for feed-in tariffs, with rising costs for private consumers and also for industry. I think the next chart makes it especially clear. What does it mean? When we started EEG, that is Renewable Energies Act in Germany, the cost allocation, the Umlage, when it started in 2000, let me take this here. This is a household with 4 persons. Such a family had to pay 11 euros more per year for this cost allocation, for the Erneuerbare Energien Umlage. And now, in 2013, this family has to pay more than 310 euros more for the electricity, for the power, and next year 366 euros. You see how quick we have rising costs for private households and companies, and therefore the cost competitiveness for German industry, for German business, is one of the big discussions we have at the moment. So I will conclude with a short look at the European development. You only should focus on this. This is the installed capacity 2020. We have 29% in the renewable. And next, the electricity generation in 2020 is 20%. What I want to show you is that there is a loss of around about 1/3 of the renewable generation. Also, in the moment, we have a situation that 1/3 of the total renewables generation we have to throw away. In Germany, we speak of throw away renewable energy, because regarding the stability of the grid, we cannot use all the renewable energy generation by wind and solar. Therefore, Poland and France and Czech Republic, our neighbors, have to take it, and we speak of negative prices. We have to pay for that our neighbors get this renewable energy production. Only to show you the challenges, the problems we have to tackle with. But the way we will go on this way, that is the development worldwide, and you see the investments in solar and wind. They increase rapidly. Next chart underlines that investments in solar and wind are the biggest investments worldwide. And I will conclude with the last chart.
which I took with me from a Bloomberg New Energy Finance Conference in New York some months ago. Clean energy asset investments will be $630 billion in 2030. That is round about 3/4 of the total investments. Therefore, I would like to motivate each and everybody to follow this way, because I'm convinced, not only as a former environmental minister, also in my nowadays advisory, I'm convinced that in the long run, these renewable energies will be so successful that it's good to be one of the first movers to go this way, because in the long run, we have not to pay for wind, we have not to pay for sunshine when we realize the installations. And it's also, I think, a system close to people, as we see here. It's not a centralized system, and a farmer and a private household and each and everybody can use it and can invest it. A lot of farmers have a third, fourth, or fifth income having invested in renewable energies. Therefore, I would like to give you all these kind of power to make investments in renewable power. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So I believe that Germany provides us a glimpse to the future, and the future is a lot of renewable energy, some of it not produced on time, and the solution for that is storage. And I call now upon our next keynote speaker, which is a world-renowned expert on energy storage, Dr. Rahul Wallerwalker, which is Executive Director of the Indian Storage Alliance and also the Secretary of the American Alliance for Energy Storage. And Rahul will give us some insight about future energy storage technologies and the situation of storage in India and in the US. Please.
First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me here. We have been working with some of the Israeli companies, but I'm sorry for a little bit voice trouble. I'm having a little bit bad throat, so I hope all of you can understand me. But I'd like to talk about both opportunities for energy storage, both in US and India. But to start off, I'd like to mention about just the energy technology landscape. Okay. Energy technology landscape, then I'll go into some opportunities in US market, and then I'll conclude with India's energy infrastructure challenges and how we are looking at energy storage to play a key role in addressing India's challenges. So if you think of energy storage at a large scale grid, energy storage can play a role at almost every part of the grid. You don't have to think about energy storage just as batteries. Energy storage technologies, again, one of the most widely used energy storage technologies is pumped hydro. Right now around the globe, there is almost 80 gigawatt of pumped hydro storage already being installed and is very efficiently used. But there are also other distributed, other sort of centralized generation technologies such as compressed air energy storage technologies, which can be again deployed at hundreds of megawatt scale. If you think about, no, stay on the same slide. Oh, this is not working. Okay. Oh, okay. Can you go back? Sorry. Yeah. So on the middle scale at the transmission and distribution level, you can have storage technologies which are in the range of like 500 kilowatt to maybe 20, 30 megawatt. These are technologies which are right now, a number of electrochemical technologies are being used, but also in some cases, flywheels are also being used at this scale. And once you start thinking about like less than megawatt scale, there are also a number of technologies which can be deployed for addressing distribution level challenges, for providing community energy storage resources for the distribution side as well. Next, please. So there are a number of factors when you're looking about energy storage. First of all, you need to understand different technologies, because again, energy storage is not just a single technology. There are probably 16 to 18 different type of energy storage devices or families, and within each family probably there are again like 8 to 10 sub families. So for example, when you talk lithium ion batteries, within lithium ion batteries there are probably 10 prominent different lithium ion battery types, each having different trade-offs in terms of the cycle life versus capital cost. So there is also opportunity for optimizing storage configurations. There is a need for understanding market rules. The applications could be at various ranges, right from generation, where you can use energy storage for energy arbitrage, for providing grid stability services called as ancillary services, where one of the most prominent and most profitable services are frequency regulation. But there are also other services such as spinning or synchronous reserve, non-spinning reserve, and particularly in the context of renewable integration. Now, particularly some of the regions in US are looking at introducing new ramping products. At the transmission, at the transmission and distribution level, again, right now, again, we have seen it both in Germany as well as I believe here in Israel. We are talking about huge investments in transmission for particularly transmitting the renewable energy from one region to other, because most of the time the renewable energy sources are not very uniformly distributed. Some regions may be dominant for solar, some regions may be dominant for wind. But when you start thinking about the huge investment required in transmission, the type of challenges where how many of you are familiar with NIMBY? Is this a common term here? So NIMBY stands not in my backyard, but actually nowadays actually in the development where people talk about banana. Anyone heard banana? Okay, so build absolutely nothing near anything. So particularly in terms of transmission, I think, again, I like transmission lines. I like to take pictures of transmission lines everywhere. But I think I'm one of the rare peoples. I think most of the people don't like to see transmission lines. But then how do you get this energy to other sources? So that's where there are huge opportunities on how you can use existing transmission infrastructure and optimize it using energy storage. Also on the end user side, there are different market rules which are coming in terms of demand response, where instead of just assuming that demand is very static and you just have to meet the demand, there are now market-based programs introduced. Sorry. So thank you. So there are market-based programs which are called as demand response, where where customers can actually get paid for reducing their demand when system load is very high or the wholesale electricity prices are very high. So next. So one of the challenges when you're talking about large amount of renewable generation, first I'll take an example on the left-hand side of wind. So the curve in the background in the red represents the basically a typical weekly load shape for a utility, where you see at night load is low, then in the morning the load starts to rise. It may again go down a little bit in the afternoon, and again in the evening there may be a peak. When you start sort of accepting all the wind as a negative load, then you are basically trying to dispatch your rest of the system using the net load, which is represented in the curve in the blue. So if you compare the curve in the red and curve in the blue, you will notice some stark differences. One is the minimum generation level is significantly lower as compared to the curve in the red. That is a big challenge, particularly when you have a significant amount of your generation in baseload generation, such as nuclear or even large coal plants, where nuclear plants typically you cannot back down below almost 95% of your installed capacity. Coal plants you may be able to back down, but there is a heat rate penalty. So although you may be generating less energy, you may be actually consuming same amount of fuel for generating that less amount of energy. Also, there are issues in terms of the ramp rates. So whenever there is in the morning ramp up or evening ramp down, or whenever the renewable energy output is changing, the amount of flexible resources required are significantly higher. And this is a very big problem in India, because in India traditionally the system gets built only looking at the base load generation. India has very less amount of peaker generation. In India, basically, the utilities use load shedding as a way of managing the peaks. So the regions where there are more losses customers do not get access to power during the high price periods or high load periods. But again, solar is not exempt from such variability. Actually, my former advisor at Carnegie Mellon University did some analysis here, and he suggested that actually solar has more intermittency issues than wind, because solar almost becomes a digital on and off system, whereas with wind you get some natural inertia and mechanical inertia to address second to second fluctuations. And again, on purely perfect days you can get a very nice bell curve. But whenever there are some cloud covers, there are some dust covers, you can get very spiky profiles, as you can see in the other chart showing the solar output. Next, please. Thank you. Right now there is a number of projects where people have already started integrating storage and wind farms. The top right-hand side image, that is of a wind farm owned by AES Energy Storage in US. The location is West Virginia, Laurel Mountain, where there is a 110 megawatt wind farm, and that wind farm uses a 32 megawatt lithium-ion battery for smoothing out the wind fluctuations, but also providing frequency regulation services to the grid and earn revenues from that. The central picture is of hybrid system with a wind farm and solar farm in Australia, where Eilat is a company which has used advanced lead acid batteries, which combines lead acid chemistry with ultra capacitors for a similar application. And the bottom one is some images from Hawaii, where SNC Electric has used sodium sulfur as well as some flywheels and ultra capacitor systems for using in the system. And the schematics is basically how companies like ours manage these resources. So what Customized Energy Solutions does is we manage around 3,000 megawatts of assets in US, where we use SCADA systems for collecting data from the wind farms. We at the same time monitor the grid conditions and try to basically balance, optimize the dispatch of the energy storage along with the renewable output. Next, please. So here are some other ways in which energy storage can be integrated with solar. The left-hand side system shows mainly a sort of a microgrid system or a closed loop system, where one of the challenges with solar is that solar starts dropping down depending on the location, maybe somewhere after 4 p.m. But most of the times the business times last at least till 5:30 p.m. or maybe 6 p.m. So there is this typical known problem of if you are relying on solar generation, then what you do for the evening peak. So in this case, again, Eilat demonstrated that you can keep on charging the batteries throughout the day and then use it for meeting the 2-hour evening peak without any problem. The other opportunity which we are trying to push for is that even if you are trying to use storage to smooth out solar, you are going to typically use it for maximum 8 hours in a day. So you have now an excellent asset which is sitting idle for remaining 15 hours of the day. So if you can provide grid ancillary services and earn some revenues from this, then the economics of such hybrid system can be improved very significantly. And we are currently working on a couple of projects in US where this system is being tried out, and also we are looking at deploying some similar systems in India. Next, please. So in terms of energy storage, as I mentioned, the family is huge. There are more than probably 15 or 20 different types of storage technologies. And again, this is a slightly outdated chart. This was originally created by ESA almost back in 2008, 2009. We have been working on updating this chart, but probably there are almost like 5 to 6 other prominent chemistries which have come up in last 5 years, which are again fit into different parts. The key part in this chart is notice that both the axes are in logarithmic scale. So if you convert these scales into linear scale, then pumped hydro storage, which is a small bubble on the right hand side top corner, that actually ends up taking the 90% of the space, which is a reality in terms of the installed capacity. But at the same time, the electrochemical or mechanical systems such as isothermal case, flywheels, these are the areas where there is lots of exciting new development happening. So at Electricity Storage Association, we like to use this chart to show how evolving is the field of energy storage. Next, please. So here are just some representative examples that in each of these areas there are multiple companies who are developing these technologies. And again, These are not all. Right now at ESA, we have somewhere around 130, 140 member companies, each of them mainly working on different type of storage technologies. But also there are associated other industries which also needs to interact. For example, the power inverters, the balance of the system providers. So I think as the energy storage technology, the landscape is very evolving. There is huge amount of venture capital, private equity money, which has been pumped into this area in last particularly 5 years. And that is now showing results in terms of some of these technologies coming close to commercialization. Next, please. One of the key enablers in achieving energy storage is also the policy side. So you cannot just focus on technologies. I think in terms of technology, we are in very good shape. I think there are definitely opportunities for improving technologies, but we have right now a number of technologies which can provide significant services to the grid. But the challenges traditionally for storage was that storage never fits into the traditional utility scheme, as Dr. Werner showed, where storage is not a generation, storage is not a load. Storage acts sometimes as a generation, sometimes as a load, and sometimes it can act for providing stability to the transmission system. So there are certain issues in terms of the policy framework, how you manage storage, what type of asset class it is. There were certain issues earlier where in terms of the market rules, the ancillary services, particularly the electric grid rules in US suggested that these services can be provided only by a rotating generator. Now it wasn't that the regulators were trying to stop energy storage from providing these services. When these rules were written probably 20, 30 years back, no one was thinking about energy storage. So in last 5 years, if you see, starting with some of the orders from FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, almost every region in US has taken certain steps for removing these barriers and enabling energy storage integration into electricity markets and at the customer end. Next, please. So here are just some representative projects. If you see the current landscape, actually there are a lot more projects. There are probably more than 100 energy storage projects currently in demonstration or actual commercial operations in different parts in US. But this chart is just showing you some of the key projects which were selected by US Department of Energy for smart grid demonstration projects. And again, one thing which I would like you to notice is that these projects and locations actually map very closely with the regions where there are very active electricity market. And that is a point which I would like to re-emphasize, because lots of times there is this argument among storage developers where people think that, oh, actually a traditional utility landscape is perfect for storage because you can capture all the multiple value streams with a single entity, and that can actually enable more development of energy storage. Whereas the practical experience suggests that in a traditional landscape, for utilities, lots of time they are just not aware of the specific cost items for different ancillary services or particular items. So it becomes actually difficult to justify investments into new technologies. Whereas in regions where there are electricity markets, there is a quantification of different value streams. The investors can come in, independent power developers can come in, and they can say that, okay, I want to use this particular technology and build a commercially profitable project. AES Energy Storage is one such company who has already crossed more than 100 megawatt of energy storage projects around the world. Next, please. So now I'd like to just switch a little bit and talk about India. Again, I don't know how many of you are familiar with India, but I know that I think lots of people from Israel, India has very close connections, so probably you are aware of this reality. But India, although on the population we are very close to China, in terms of the energy infrastructure growth, India hasn't kept up. So India traditionally has never added more than 10 to 15 gigawatt of power in any given year, whereas China in last 15 years has added somewhere between 75 to 120 gigawatt of new generation every year. If you think of US for a population of around 300 million has a total installed generation of around 1100 gigawatts. Whereas India, for a population of 1.2 billion, has around 200 gigawatt of total installed generation. So there is a big gap in terms of per capita energy consumption. Again, I don't want to claim that everyone in India is very energy efficient. If you go to cities like Mumbai, probably we waste as much energy as anywhere else in the world. But again, there is a big disconnect where almost 400 million people in India do not have access to electricity at all. So if you think of where India needs to be in next 20 years in terms of providing access to electricity to these 400 million people, or in terms of continued economic growth, where India has a target of growing at somewhere between 6 to 10% of economic growth year on year, then the various scenarios suggest that India needs to add somewhere between 250 to 1,000 gigawatt of new generation within next 20 years. Now the reality is that since independence in last 70 years, India has built maybe half of the 200 gigawatt, and now we are talking about adding same amount or maybe 4 times the amount within next 20 years. So this is not going to happen just with centralized generation. The regulators in India, the politicians have tried this. India has looked at nuclear energy. India has looked at large ultra mega power projects with coal plants. But again, India being a democracy, there are lots of hurdles in terms of land acquisition, in terms of environmental clearances, where such large mega projects are very difficult to implement and may face 5-year, 10-year delay from the plans to actual implementation. So there is a lots of focus on renewable energy in India. Next slide, please. Luckily, India is blessed both with excellent wind as well as solar resources. Currently, India has around 19 gigawatt of wind energy installed, and there are projections are that India could add another 30 gigawatt of wind by 2020. Similarly, India in last 2 years started focusing a lot on solar. 2 years back, India just had 5 megawatt of solar photovoltaic projects, whereas 2 years back, Indian government announced a national solar mission with a goal of getting 20 gigawatt of solar by 2022. And they had put a target of getting around 1 gigawatt of solar in first 3 years to try to sort of learn. But with the developments, what happened with Germany and Spain and the type of excess solar capacity which got built around the world, there was tremendous interest in building solar projects in India. And just in last 18 months, India has now built more than 2,000 megawatts of solar projects in India. And this trend is expected to continue quite a lot, because now solar prices are coming down to a level where, particularly for commercial and industrial customers, they're almost at grid parity. So if we can address the issue about the variability, then solar energy is almost already at grid parity in India. Next, please. But one big challenge in India is that since there is such a big supply-demand shortfall, India typically has around 14%, 12 to 14% shortage. If you think of maybe grid like Germany or US or any other developed countries, typically the grids are operated with a 15 to 20% surplus generation, looking at like once in a 10-year peak load expected. Whereas India on a day-to-day basis has almost like 15 to 20% shortage of the generation. That's where in India actually we call our generation dispatchers load dispatchers, because practically actually they are managing which area to do load shedding at different times of the day rather than dispatching generation. But as a result of that, the grid frequency varies quite a lot. The nominal frequency is 50 hertz, but if you start looking at sort of 4-second data, then you can see that the grid frequency fluctuates almost from 49.4 hertz to 50.4 hertz. So it's almost like a 1 hertz band, and then there is associated impacts on induction equipment, the other losses, failures of equipment. So there is a cost to the society because of not having good, reliable and good power quality in the system. So that needs to be addressed. Next, please. So looking at this now, Indian regulators have added a new Indian electricity grid code, where even wind generators have been asked to submit 15-minute day-ahead forecast. And if at any 15-minute interval, if the forecast is more than 30% off, then the wind farms may have to start paying penalty based on the grid frequency at that time. So that is generating significant challenges for wind developers, because traditionally building wind projects was financially very stable business. You just have to do the wind assessment. You have some rough idea in terms of how many units in a year you will generate. You sign a power purchase agreement for a fixed price. You get some tax incentives, some renewable energy certificates, and you just finance the project. It was very simple, almost no financial risk in the project unless you screw up in choosing your wind site or choosing the wind turbine technology. But now with this additional uncertainty about the wind forecasting error, there is a big concern, and we are seeing lots of interest from particularly private equity players who are putting huge amount of investments into wind farms about looking at energy storage for resolving this. Next, please. Here is just some data in terms of how many time intervals the frequency is below 49.8 hertz. That's a time when there could be penalties. So you can see that almost 30 to 40% of the time intervals there could be penalties levied upon wind farms. Next, please. So here is some actual data based on some initial mock scheduling which was done, where the way you read this chart is the two circles, the red circle and purple circle, they represent the plus minus 30% band, and the green line represents if the forecast was exactly accurate, then basically the output will follow the green line. And the wiggly lines actually show the real output. And you can see that in both Gujarat as well as Maharashtra, which are one of the two leading states with wind development, it is almost impossible for wind farm owners to stay within that plus minus 30% band. So in some cases, there may be some additional revenue which wind farm owners get. But again, Indian regulators are typically very conscious about people trying to game the system. So they are worried that if you just allow people to earn more money by pumping more power, people will always underschedule and try to get more money. So they have put also some caps. So whatever you schedule, more than 50% of that, you do not get paid. So if you schedule, say if you have a 100 megawatt wind farm and you just say that, okay, I'm going to generate 10 megawatt, and if you actually generate 30 megawatts, then for anything which you generate more than 15 megawatts, you just get paid some nominal amount, which is not even equivalent to the average PPA price which you get paid. So again, these are the issues which are practically generating big concerns about wind farm developers and generating big opportunities for energy storage. Next, please. The other opportunities in India, as I mentioned, is that microgrids. There are 400 million people without access to electricity, and always the Indian government had programs for national electrification. It's not that suddenly people have discovered this last year or this year, but the problem is in terms of the supply-demand shortfalls plus laying the transmission lines, it has been very difficult to reach to population. But now with the distributed solar, the distributed wind, and as well as using biomass, there is lots of interest in directly using microgrids for providing access to energy for this program. And Indian government has some programs where if you want to go through the government route, then there could be almost 90% of the capital cost of the project can be paid by directly central government. Of course, there is a bidding mechanism where you have to qualify, and you have to your cost have to be low enough to get selected. But again, in India, no one expects government to do everything. So there are actually right now, there are probably somewhere between 60 to 100 young, not necessarily young, there may be some senior people also, but sort of entrepreneurs who have started social enterprises to try to provide access to electricity to villages, where they are building their own networks, they are developing their own payment mechanisms and providing access to electricity to villagers. And people are saying that actually there is a big need. People are ready to pay almost 3 to 4 times the average price of the grid electricity for getting access to minimum amount of electricity. Next, please. But again, microgrids is not only about rural electrification. In India right now, there are more than 300 townships being built, which are typically somewhere around like say 100 to 150 acre townships with almost like 20 to 30 skyscrapers with 20-story, 30-story skyscrapers with like fancy features like 9-hole golf course, 5 or 6 swimming pools. But the problem with these type of ultra-modern townships, and developers always try to position these as green townships with putting some solar on the rooftop and other thing. But again, when you're talking about 30-story buildings, the rooftop space is not even sufficient to cover the elevator lighting. So So there are challenges, and typically these townships are getting built away from the major cities because of the land prices. So there are issues in terms of having reliable power, and most of these real estate developers end up putting like a 20 megawatt, 50 megawatt diesel generator to provide access, which no one wants. So again, there are different mechanisms being made where distributed generation with energy storage can meet these requirements. Next, please. Again, there is, as I mentioned earlier, demand response is a big area. Actually, customized energy solutions is involved in India's first demand response program in Mumbai for Tata Power, where we are using thermal storage, building automation, and number of other technologies for providing 25 megawatt of demand response to Tata Power in Mumbai. Next, please. So we did, as a India Energy Storage Alliance, we did a market assessment where we looked at almost 15 to 20 different applications, and we believe that in next 5 to 7 years, Indian market could provide a 15 to 20 gigawatt market opportunity to energy storage industry. Again, some of the examples are that telecom towers, where people are looking for like 3 to 5 kilowatt solutions, but there are almost 700,000 telecom towers in India who are looking for alternate solutions for replacing diesel. There are also National Electric Mobility Mission, where the government has set a goal of getting 6 to 7 million electric vehicles with around 2 million four-wheelers and 4 million two-wheeler vehicles. So next, please. So again, looking at these opportunities, we created last year India Energy Storage Alliance, and again, we are working with various technology providers, research universities, as well as various Indian large commercial industrial customers to try to advance adoption of energy storage and microgrid technologies in India. Next. So again, if you need more information, you can visit our website, indiaesa.info. And again, there is lots of free information available. And again, if any of the technology providers want to join, there are also member-only resources which are available on the site. Next. So, as I mentioned, in US, one of the key things was getting policies right for energy storage. So again, in India, we are focusing a lot on trying to advance right policies for energy storage. And I think I'm running out of time. So, but again, if you have any questions, I think I'll be available during the lunch to talk more about it. But just at the end, I would like to mention that in 2 weeks, we are hosting India's first International Energy Storage Conference in Mumbai. So if any one of you are interested, you are most welcome to join. And again, I have some information about the conference here, so I'll be happy to share that. Once again, thank you very much.